Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the inaugural episode of Clay Conversations, a brand new monthly series of talks and interviews exploring topics close to the heart of the ceramic community. Whether you're a seasoned potter, a passionate collector, or simply curious about the world of clay, this is a space where we will come together to learn, share, and celebrate all things ceramics. We're kicking off this exciting series with an exceptional guest, Rika Herbst, a highly acclaimed ceramic artist whose contributions to the field span both national and international stages. Rika has taken part in numerous regional and national exhibitions and is widely respected for artistry expertise and dedication to the craft. Her experience is as diverse as it is impressive. She has run a production pottery, conducted academic research, and for many years operated a teaching studio that shaped countless ceramicists. Today, she continues to share her knowledge generously through the Clay Chat WhatsApp group, a vibrant online community that is likely the largest of its kind in South Africa, if not the world. In the special debut of Clay Conversations, Rika will take us on a journey to Jingdezhen, China, the legendary porcelain capital of the world, with a rich and storied history in ceramics going back thousands of years. She'll be sharing her experiences, impressions, and insights from this extraordinary center of ceramic heritage. We couldn't imagine a more fitting guest to launch the series, so settle in and join us as we welcome the remarkable Rika. Over to you, Rika.
Rosh, thank you very much. I feel very privileged to be the first one for this new venture. I think it's amazing to create a platform where we can share and not only our knowledge but our experiences, which is so rich. Thank you very much. For the purpose of the presentation, I'm just going to switch off my video. Having worked with porcelain for so many years, Jingdezhen has always been on my list of to do, my bucket list, and with the hope of one day visiting. When I had the opportunity to be invited for a residency, I jumped at it immediately. It just came at the best time of my life, and yeah, so let's continue with the journey. I just want to... just for interest, Jingdezhen, if you can see on the map of China, is on the north eastern side, where the little arrow shows part of the Jiangxi province. I traveled from Johannesburg to Doha, Shanghai, and then took a fast train, which took about 4.5 to 5 hours to arrive in Jingdezhen at midnight. Obviously, the history of Jingdezhen is core to the history of porcelain, and it all started with kaolin. Kaolin was discovered or mined at the Gaoling Mountain, which is about an hour from Jingdezhen. And there, that kaolin was mined and washed until the 1960s. It was transported from the mountain to the little town, Dongbukun, at the bottom of the mountain. And then subsequently from there, it was transported by water on the boats and the river to Jingdezhen. In Jingdezhen, obviously, the kaolin was then used to produce the porcelain. And that's where the history started for China, for Jingdezhen and porcelain being so well known. The early production of porcelain in Jingdezhen dates back to about 618 to 907 BCE, which was the first recorded porcelain that was produced for official use, which was the interesting period of the Tang dynasty. Jingdezhen was at first known as Changnanzhen, and the name was changed in 1004 by Emperor Zhenzong, who changed it to Jingdezhen because he fell in love with the porcelain that was produced there. During the Song dynasty, it was a great popular time for Jingdezhen and the porcelain, especially the celadon, and the porcelain were highly valued, and sometimes it was actually worth more than their weight in gold. During the Ming dynasty, Jingdezhen became the center of porcelain production in China. It was distributed all over the country. And the emperor controlled all of the official kilns at that stage. And they were producing the large quantities of imperial porcelain as we know it. It was produced for the court. That is the humble beginning of the Kaolin on the mountain. And Jingdezhen is the only city that you will, well, probably there are others, but where you see porcelain on the lampposts. You see it everywhere. That is where pieces are produced and kilns built for the sizes of the pieces and not according to the kilns. There's no limitation to size. We think according to the sizes of our kilns when we produce, there it's just the other way around. From intricate carving to mass production of large-scale pieces, everything is there in porcelain. This is known as the world's largest plate, porcelain plate. It was installed in the Ceramic Art Avenue in August 2024, and it is called the Silk Road Legend. It measures about 2.48 meter in diameter, and it depicts the cultural memories of the Silk Road, and it embodies the magnificence of the world ceramic history. What is interesting is that it took 45 days from design to completion. Can only be done in China. Just a close-up of the pictures on there. There's a lot of factories doing reproduction of ancient ware from the old factory sites. That's what you can see from small, major, big, painted, different ware, including modern ceramics, contemporary ceramics, all blue and white. While you're there, you can't help but get infected with blue and white fever. This is from the village outside Jingdezhen, just for the scale of that huge bowl that collapsed in the kiln. So everything doesn't always go as planned. There you can see the level of skill required for painting.
It's just fascinating stuff.
Some contemporary ceramics, and then obviously they built museums, display cases, and they've created a wonder world of blue and white ceramics.
Very interesting.
Unfortunately, as with any factory production, there are the waste. It was extremely disappointing in the beginning to see all this wasteland. It developed into a tourist attraction. However, they have now systems in place of upcycling pieces. You can see it's reused. Artists use it. They use it in architectural settings, walls. They create tourist attractions and reusing, upcycling the shards and broken pieces of porcelain. Just some pictures of how it's being reused and utilized. And obviously Jingdezhen would be the only place where you would be able to buy a piece of porcelain from a vending machine.
A vending machine.
This is just a little video of my arrival in Jingdezhen.
This porcelain plate is 2.45 meters. It's the biggest porcelain plate in the world. Yes, this is her journey. This is her residency. And you see the size of the lampposts, all covered in porcelain. They're all porcelain. They're all blue and white. Big, huge columns.
It was just my little trip. I arrived with the speed train. As you could see there, the temperature was 9 degrees, freezing cold. That is the heart of the residency center where I stayed. The White Big Bear is normally the point where we gather whenever we travel anywhere. I was at first daunted by the idea of arriving at midnight in Jingdezhen, but it was very similar to daylight. A buzz, everything was still happening. Taxis taking you, dropping you where you need to be. Full instructions by video, how to get to your apartment, how to enter the apartment, easy to get in. A bit of history about the Ceramic Art Avenue. This was a whole new development that was recreated and uplifted because the old workshops were state-owned and it was called the Yuzo Ceramic Factory. And during the 1990s, after the industrial reform, the business started to slide until the whole factory was eventually closed. And because the ceramic factory is part of this history, they felt it important to reinvent it and keep it part of history. And then with that in mind, renovations began in 2013 for the newly Taoxishan Ceramic Cultural and Creative Block. And it took 3 years of design and construction, and it was officially opened in October 2016. Some of the old workshops and kilns, chimneys, and water towers are still standing there. And you can see as before, there's a photo of the new entrance. That's how the entrance looked before the development. One of the buildings that's now developed, that's what it looked like before the upgrading. So there's the international studio, which was created. That was part of the first phase. And the whole development was designed and developed by David Chipperfield. And the area is to preserve, restore, and convert existing buildings and create a cultural exchange village. And that is what it's all about. That's the studio, international studio, where all the administration is happening from. Part of the whole old buildings, there you can see the David Chipperfield style. Completely newly renovated. This area is part of the development where it's called the Yi Space, and it's provided for young entrepreneurs and artists for free, where they can sell their ceramic works. It's to keep the youngsters involved and create platforms for them to get economically active, because of there being 3 universities where they graduate every year in ceramic technology and design. This is now the studio where I stayed. Just a bit of the information about the residency as such. There's the bedroom. My studio was attached to my bedroom. Because I work in porcelain, I prefer to have my individual studio so that I cannot have it contaminated with other clays. There are artists working in black, terracotta, grout, all kinds of clay. And I was very blessed to have my own studio. This is part of the whole residency setup. Everything you can think of is there. Wheels, shelves, slip casting machines, trolleys, dryers, glazes to choose, all different temperatures, all different clays, gas kilns, small, big, large, a laundry available, trolleys to use, testing kilns, the dryer where we dried our molds and even work to be dried. The center also hosts exhibitions for international artists who prefer to stay there for a period of 3 months. Then they can host their own individual art exhibitions. Many meetings of international artists eating together, getting to know each other. When I arrived, I was part of the small group. We were 9. It grew, and some of them were presenting individual presentations of their work and their experience, where they come from, and also some practical demonstrations of how they do their work. It's all presented as part of the residency group. Being a foreigner, we were always invited to dinners, to presentations, to speak to students. This was a presentation that we joined and spoke to a couple of English students in order for them to learn about our culture in South Africa. Also the international presentations. There's the Ministry of Arts and Culture and how they reinvest into their youth in order to keep ceramics and business growing. It was quite informative for me to attend these lectures. Not only foreigners go to this particular Taoxishan Center, there are local ceramic artists that are chosen and selected to work there. You can see this gentleman's work, very intricate stoneware work that he was making there. And going shopping was a slight different experience. You know, raw material came in huge bulk bags, and yeah, everything is available for raw clay if you want to mix your own clay, and even if you want to have raw materials for mixing your own glazes. But at the end of the day, it was never needed. There you can see me looking for rice husk ash, which was a rare thing to find. Most of the shops sell little samples of these packets of clay, which is very convenient because arriving in a new country, working with new material required a lot of testing. So I was given quite a lot of samples in order to try, making little pinch pots, little leaves in order to try with that. This is the entrance of the old factory where we go shopping. You see trolleys and production phases everywhere, all over, whenever you walk in town. On arrival, I had to give a project plan of what I intended to make. My whole idea was to upscale my work in terms of size. I was introduced to this mold maker. I had to visit him at his workshop, and there you can see him throwing me a master 6 centimeter deep bowl for my style, which was the intention to do. There's the mold made. I saw him the morning. The next day, it was delivered. I had it in the dryer to dry, and I could start working on it 2 days later. This is what the porcelain looked like when I got. There were many different types of porcelain. I selected the one that I would like to be as white and translucent as possible. And this is what the clay looked like. Very different to what we're used to. Very harsh clay. I found it very different to, my expectation of what we are used to. So I cut it up and I started the paper porcelain process, putting it with water and having to mix it. And that was my first disaster. The mixer was quite strong and I totally misjudged myself, and we had clay all over the floor. Being harsh kaolin, it took me a day to clean up, needless to say. But I survived, and we had clay, paper clay, and I started to do my normal process, wanted to carve, and as you can see, that clay is just not made for carving. I was unable to carve, totally. I had to make a new plan, so yeah, worked in different methods to try and do my own technique, managed to make a piece, was very excited because my biggest pieces were in South Africa and could make fired with 30 centimeters. These molds were 60 centimeters tall, and I was hoping to get nice big pieces, but not taking into consideration the shrinkage. And eventually, after shrinkage, they weren't very much bigger than 30 centimeter either. Because of the green strength of the porcelain, I just had to experiment further, and that's why I took the liberty of challenging myself and cutting out the pieces with new designs, because the green strength is so enormously, it's so good that I could do this, and it could actually fire like that. That is just a photo of my first cast that I tested for the porcelain to see how thin it can go. I virtually poured the paper porcelain slip in and out. Many disasters, many tests later, but yes, eventually I was able to create pieces in my technique with their clay, play around with some soluble salts as well. There you can see soluble salts obviously freely available there and at a much more affordable price than we can get in South Africa. And that is just a test piece that I did to see how thin, and it's virtually like glass. And that is a resistant piece with acid. It's virtually as thin as glass. But it does sag, it doesn't keep its shape. So it's not ideal for those big shapes. These were little pinch pots I just also made for a test to see what they fire like in the gas kiln versus the electrical kiln. I was very ambitious and wanted to do some large lights and installations, and because of the size of the molds, I had to contract it out to a factory who were trying to make these molds in my designs with the clay. There you can see how thick they work with the clay, and for me, if I wanted translucency, I would not have been able to achieve that, and that project unfortunately did not make the end. One of the points or one of the important events of the residency is an exhibition of the group of international artists. And this was then the invitation for that, held at the same premises in the Cuomo Art Gallery. And there is the pieces on exhibition eventually. I could not take work there. Some of the international artists who arrived just before me brought work from home, which probably would have been much easier. I unfortunately didn't have work available. I just finished studies at that stage before I traveled, and I had to go and make work there. So most of my time was spent on testing, experimenting, working to get work made and ready for the exhibition. That was the pressure point. But you can see all different kinds and styles of work made there by international artists, including glass, combining glass and ceramics, where ready-made pieces are painted and decals used as well. That's just a close-up of the piece. I preferred it to be on at least some pieces to be displayed. While I was in Jingdezhen, the exhibition of the International Ceramic Art Biennale was still on at the university, and we were able to go there on a group tour. And the amount of work that I saw there, the variety of work, the scale of the work was mind-blowing, not just in size, concept, diversity. It's just unbelievable. This is probably a 3 by 3 meter block. Mostly work in porcelain. There you can see many blocks. This shoe is about 1 meter in length, and it's all ceramic. Can't believe it, but that is true. And then off shopping was amazing. So many shops, so many tools that we could go. Places producing decals. I was able to take my own design, and they would print underglaze, overglaze decals. Everything you can think of is there. Glazes in all colors, for all different clays, for all different temperatures. This is a center of all the shops with the various materials. Just heaven for any ceramicist. Blue is not just blue there. There's all shades of blue. Probably not 50 shades, but 100 shades of blue with different qualities, either moving under the glaze, moving over the glaze, with the glaze. This is a photo from the Ghost Market. I enjoyed it very much. It's called the Ghost Market because it opens at 4 in the morning. And it's where people come together from all over around Jingdezhen and sell from original antiques, artifacts. And these are from old kilns, collapsed and overfired and washed up and washed and cleared. You can see there's still pieces in the setters that were fired. And that is how trading at that market goes. Shards are for sale, antique clothing, antique pots, antique carved wooden work. While I was there, I was also very fortunate to attend a function at the Opera House, which was also designed by David Chipperfield. You'll see some photos of the building now. But what was interesting about this concert is that this is one of the grandsons of the Stradivari family. And he had a concert there because they've opened up a factory in Shanghai where they were producing the Stradivari violins again. And there were photos and videos about the history. That is just some pictures of the Opera House. There is the Stradivari Night, some more pictures of the Opera House. This is the Imperial Kiln site. It is part of the original old workshops, and it was converted into a museum. You can see the modern buildings on top, taking on the same shape as the kilns. And right next to it is the ancient village, still with the traditional roofs, and it's all part of this whole big museum. Being a foreigner, you were always asked to pose for pictures. I think I was more photographed in China than I was photographed on my wedding day. But, you know, you go with it. It's just a happy place. Some of the display in the museum, some of the oldest shards. This piece was made by hand, all in porcelain. I could not believe it. Each piece of chain, the little bells, as you can see there on the boat. It's just incredible to see the craftsmanship, the way it's displayed. There's some part of the ancient section and the very old tiles. And the old village, very much renovated or reconstructed modernly with the old intact. We were also invited to attend a lot of new residencies that's opening up there, which show us what the residency offer. There you can see another residency. Wheels, kilns, workshops, display area, everything available. Also part of the residency, there's individual artists that can rent space and permanently stay there. This is Xiao Lei, upcoming international artist working with paper porcelain. Was invited to work with him for a day. I also had the privilege of meeting Felicity Aleph and Takeshi Yasuda in their Red Gallery. It was a memorable experience. Not only is their workshop like a museum with ancient artifacts, but also to see how they work and how they produce. Felicity painting those large 3-meter tall pieces of porcelain, and Takeshi took us through his collection of ancient sculptures. It was an incredible experience. Two warm, richly sharing people of their experience and their love for ceramics. Just some street life. You walk down the street, there's noodle kitchens, noodle houses, the old factory, a bamboo little forest, ancient sculptures that's been there for quite some time. Recycling does happen. And then we went to the Sanbawa village. That is also about 10 kilometers outside Jingdezhen. It's a village with one road entering into the village, like a bottleneck. And as you go in, there's the Sanbao Museum. And that is also where Jackson Lee opened up the Sanbao residency. It's also where he stays. And that is how the village was reconstructed, using old ceramics into the walls, and look at the glass building of the museum at the back, modern and ancient all together. Still, the old mills are working there, where they were the hammer mills for the kaolin being crushed. It was wonderful to hear those mills hammering down. There you can see the kaolin in the Sanbao village also. That is what's happening. When the kaolin is crushed, it is filtered down. You can see how it gets thicker and thicker. And as it dries out, it's then shaped into blocks, which is then transported to Jingdezhen as well, or used in Sanbao village for production as well. That's the entrance to Jackson Lee's studio and his house. We were very lucky to be invited to stay for lunch. He took us around his work. Most of his work is wood-fired. There you can see what you have to look at while you're having tea. Everything is utilized, nothing's wasted. Nice big bowl of food being prepared for us there. Then back to the residency. The main function of the residency for international artists is around the Spring Festival, which normally happens on the first full moon, either at the end of April or the first week of May. And then the Spring Festival happens, and that is where the art fair also happens, where we also were part of the process, part of trading. They offered us these stands, hundreds of stands. Me on my own, I had shared with somebody from Thailand. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people come through there in 4 days. It is overwhelming. incredible, wonderful, exhausting. Part of the Spring Festival, they have international speakers to present on different topics, mostly gallery owners, university professors, very informative, always translated. That is the group. When I left, we were over 80 international artists that had to participate at the Spring Fair. Made many new friends, many new connections. My survival, coffee, blue and white fever. People ask me, how did I manage to survive? I have peculiar eating habits, but you adapt to your environment. And it was cherry blossom time. So yes, burgers were pink. I had to participate. Everything was pink during those days. And that is how I survived. An Italian restaurant would make me a Cobb salad once a week. But even if you go out for the day shopping, you need to have refreshments. And there you can see a table, even where you sit and eat, having a little snack, all blue and white. And that is it from me in terms of the pictures.
Thank you so much, Rika. It's so wonderful for you to share your experiences and those pictures. It really felt like being there. If we have some time, we will take a few questions. Rika, if you're happy to answer a couple of questions. Okay, so you can either type your questions in the chat or put your hand up or put your video on. Anne, go for it. Nice to see you, Anne.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. Hello, Rika. Rika, that
Hello,
was
Anne.
absolutely fantastic. And my first question is, can we see this again? I'd like to actually see it more than once. Will it be on YouTube or something? Or let it, Ross
Yes.
will answer that.
Yes, so this presentation has been
Yes.
recorded and we will, share it
Well,
soon.
because I'd like to see it again. It was fantastic. It was so interesting. And I thank you so much for all the things around it that you showed that was so interesting. They really got a feeling of everything. It wasn't just the work, it was the whole ethos. And I think that was incredibly informative and educative and interesting. And I'm totally fascinated. And I definitely want to watch it again. Your exhibition, did you sell that work or do you donate it or how does that work?
As part of my agreement for the residency they offered, I had a fully sponsored residency and I had to leave 30% of the work I created there. At that size, I had to leave all 3 pieces there. They selected, they have choice of what stays behind. So those 3 pieces were left behind in Jingdezhen. The one is part of the museum collection and the other 2 is part of the Taoshushan collection that they have there.
So how many pieces did you produce when you were there?
In that particular, my signature style, only those 3, a couple of small leaves which sold, and then some experimental other pieces, which I didn't put up for sale. It was more experimental work with the soluble salts.
That must have been fascinating. Do you have any pictures of those soluble salt pieces?
I do, but I don't have them ready to share here yet. Well, I don't have them ready for as part of the presentation. But yes, but they were totally experimental, working on different.
And how were they
pieces.
fired? In an electric kiln or gas kiln or?
In gas kiln, I wasn't allowed to fire the soluble salts in the electrical kilns because of the damage that it can cause. So it was fired in the gas kilns.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the gas kilns, because they are semi-public kilns, if you can call it like that, they fire to a certain temperature. You determine the temperature, but it's always a group of artists firing together. So they were fired 1280 in reduction. Some pieces came out beautifully, but others were so over-reduced that they went virtually dark brown black.
Oh, wow. And so did you fire your pieces at 1280 in all of your pieces in those ones we saw, those 3, were those reduction fired 1280?
No, the pieces on the exhibition were fired in an electrical kiln because I couldn't take the risk of it being fired with others. So I had a medium kiln filled with my pieces.
Yeah.
And I fired them within setters so that I could control the
Okay.
shape, that it wouldn't collapse. So
Yeah.
they were
Okay.
fired in electrical kiln to 1280.
Hmm. Okay. And the setters, you made the setters yourself, or do they have them?
No, I made
Available?
the setters from stoneware clay in the same molds, and because the setters shrink less than the porcelain, I could bisque fire both and then do the high firing together.
Okay. What do I want to ask quickly? And how long did the firing take?
Normal electrical firing, but because it's paper porcelain, I am a cowboy firer, so I would go from 0 to 1280, which was quite a shock for those because I'm not allowed to set the kiln myself. So the assistants from the residency had to program it for me, and they refused to do it from 0 to 1280. So it had to go through a 200 up to 400 to 600 to 800, and from there straight up. So it probably took about 8 hours for firing.
Okay, that's about what I no. Well, that's the
Yeah.
glaze firing. Yeah, that's about probably what I would do about it. Anyway, I don't want to monopolize, so I'll stop asking questions now. But just
Well, maybe for interest, what I also can tell you is that the cost of raw materials is very, very low there. Porcelain, the best porcelain there, costs less than 10 Rand a kilogram.
Ah, what?
Terracotta clay is less than R1 a kilogram, and you buy it in
Wow.
bulk. So
Wow.
you can understand why it's so much easier to do large production there because of the material being so much more affordable.
Reasonable. Yeah.
Gas is very affordable there as well. Electricity is also not expensive. A huge firing, a kiln that I had to fire would cost me 200 Rand for those big pieces inside their molds. So production isn't a high expense there. Living costs in Jinglajin, in the area where I stayed, is expensive for housing. But obviously food, it depends on your choice. You can have dumplings for 15 yuan, which is 45 Rand a meal, or you can have slightly more expensive meals, or you can have the more upper class restaurants with full meals, more variety and more Western food as well. There was a choice of Western food. There was a choice, Japanese food, Italian food, Thai food. So, you weren't limited only to Chinese food.
Okay, thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
absolutely wonderful to see this. Thank you so much. I won't ask any more questions. Somebody else can ask now. Thank you. Loved it.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay.
Clementina, go for it.
We
Just
can't
click
hear
the
you,
unmute.
Clementina.
It will be on your bottom left, probably.
Okay. Hi, thanks, Rika. It was very interesting. I've got two questions. The one is, how long was your residency? And the second question is, you said it was a sponsored residency. Is that a normal thing? And how did you get a sponsor? And, what does it sort of cost you to stay there and your daily stipendium? And what did the sponsorship include? Was it, basically, if you could just give some details about that.
Okay. Hello, Clementina. Thank you for your question. Basically, my previous travel to China, I met somebody who recommended me to Taoxishan. They then invited me. And they have various forms of residencies that they offer. It's a selection process, but then what they do is they have either a fully sponsored residency, which means they give you accommodation, they give you a workspace, either a shared studio or an individual studio. They refunded my flight ticket, and they also gave me a material cost for work to make towards the exhibition. They have other options where they have offered artists to just give them the accommodation and workspace, but then you pay for your own material and own electricity as well. Because of it being sponsored by them, I had my own costs were then living allowance, food and expenses of traveling. But for instance, I would use a Didi, which is their taxi service, which costs 15 Rand to go anywhere up to 15 kilometers around where I stayed. So very affordable traveling. The rooms that I stayed in, unfortunately, didn't have a kitchen or available that I could prepare my own food. They now have, in the interim since I've left, have a communal kitchen where you would be able to prepare food, bigger fridges. So it would be far more affordable going than there. A flight costs about 18, that was about now, yeah, it's over a year ago. It was about 18,000 Rand. A speed train is about 2,000 Rand. I was there for 9 weeks, which is way too little. If you want to go and really immerse yourself in the material, make work, I would say at least 12 weeks. I'm very sorry that I didn't go for 12 weeks. It was just not possible for me to stay so long. And then what else did you want to know? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that was it.
They are
About language, how did most people speak English? How did you manage to get around?
challenging. Arriving in China, a lot of the people internationally speak basic English, but their basic English and what we know as basic English is very different in terms of some basic words and meaning. Most of the staff can speak basic English, so that was not a problem. But when you go out and you want to do some purchases, buying raw materials, that would have been very challenging. But there was always help. There was always assistance to help you, to either go with you or translate for you. I have to say that I used Alipay app, which was not just to pay for all transactions. There was no cash in my hand. No one accepted any cash. Everything was on Alipay. But it also translates. It's just wonderful. And WeChat is an amazing platform where you can talk and it will translate into words, or somebody else can talk and translate for you, that you can read it. So you learn to work with it. So eventually, but they are very friendly, very helpful. There was always somebody to try and assist. They would never make you feel uncomfortable. They would go out of their way to help you. That whole city, the whole area is geared towards foreigners, because for them, they know foreigners bring in money. Foreigners bring in business. And from that noodle shop to the tool shop to the raw material shop, everybody is geared to make their experience a wonderful experience and for people to want to come back.
Okay, I have a question for you, Rika. Of your visit, what sticks out to you in terms of something new or surprising in terms of technique or the process that you came across there of working in porcelain or any other clay?
The porcelain was so challenging to work with there for me. It was like having to learn to work with a whole new material. But once I understood the material, that firing and it coming out, the whiteness, the thinness, I just love porcelain. But I was so overwhelmed by the overload of stimulation visually, sensory, everything was so overloaded. I found it very difficult when I came back to work with porcelain again. I tried, but I was just not able to get back into making porcelain. And I don't know if I'll ever work with porcelain in that manner again. I've just recently started more sculptural work, because that is what inspired me. Because what I realized is, and I called it, I think I've got goldfish syndrome, meaning that I was planning my kiln can take up to this size. This is the size that I create. Not thinking, oh, I would like to make a sculpture of this size. Let's find a kiln where I can fire it. There it's so easy. There's public kilns everywhere, where it's something that we don't have here. And maybe it's something that we can nurture, that instead of working according to what we have and are limited to think bigger, to think wider. I think that is, for me, the best thing that I came home with was that think bigger, think out of your norm, get out of your comfort zone. There's so much more that can be seen, be done, and collaboration and working with international artists. It's just incredible how we could sit around a table and there would be people from Japan, Korea, Ecuador, Spain, and we could all sit and have a meal together and make jokes and laugh without understanding each other's language, but speaking the language of friends, clay. It was just incredible.
Thank you.
If anybody's interested in doing residencies, please do get in contact with me. They have options where you can. I've got the application form. It is a selection process, but I can try and you know, get your application process in, get them to see if they will accept you or make you an offer to come and do a residency. If they don't offer you residency, there are many other options where you can go that is also not costing an arm and a leg, but it's an experience I think that every ceramicist should go and experience if possible.
Sure. Very
Thank you.
inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. I think on that rather lovely, wonderful note, Rika, so thank you once again for sharing with us all. That was really enlightening. And we look forward to welcoming you all and other members to our next talk. And this will take place on a monthly basis on the last Sunday of the month at 3 p.m. And we will line up some really exciting chats like this.